She was kicked out of home for wanting to study, but her future shut everyone up. She was kicked out of home for wanting to study, but her future well and truly shut everyone up. That sweltering afternoon in Ciudad Juarez, the sound of her father's boots thudded like a final judgment against the packed earth. Chloe just wanted to study, but dreaming in her house was a sin. Between the crackle of the wood stove and the icy stare of the man kicking her out, she swore a silent oath no one would ever forget. Her future would be the answer the whole world would hear, even through their silence. If you love stories about overcoming the odds, the ones that prove we write our own destiny, subscribe now to Momentos Escritos so you don't miss out on endings like this one. And tell me, which city are you watching Chloe's gutsy journey from? Leave it in the comments. The air in the small adobe house in Ciudad Juarez was heavier than usual that Tuesday back in 1972. Chloe, all of 17 years old, felt the desert dust clinging to her skin. But that wasn't what was squeezing her chest. Her father, Graham, a man weathered by the sun and the unwritten rules of the border, had walked into her room without knocking. His heavy boots echoed on the dirt floor, and his dark eyes locked onto the suspicious lump under her straw mattress. Chloe froze. It was her only treasure, an anatomy textbook she'd bought with coins saved up over months. Graham didn't say a word. He bent down, lifted the mattress with a rough hand, and pulled the book out. He held it like it was poison, looking at it with sheer contempt. "What is this rubbish?" he snarled. His voice was a low thunder in the small room. Chloe stepped back, her hands shaking. "Dad, please. It's for reading." She dreamed of being a nurse, of crossing the pass not just to clean houses, but to study, to actually be someone. A dream that, in this house, was an absolute offense. "Reading," Graham spat, hurling the book against the wall. The pages bent with a dull, sickening thud. The women in this family don't waste time on papers. They waste time in the kitchen waiting for a husband. Do you understand? Wendy, Chloe's mother, appeared in the doorway, her hands twisting an old tea towel. She knew what was coming. She tried to intervene, her voice wavering. "Graham? Please, she's only a kid. She doesn't know what she's doing." But Graham was determined. He grabbed the book again, this time with a darker intention. "You're going to learn your place, Chloe. You're going to learn it today." He headed toward the wood stove that heated the kitchen. With the book held high, Chloe screamed, a sound choked off by pure terror. "No, Dad, please, it's all I have." She threw herself at his feet, trying to stop him, but he shoved her away, sending her tumbling onto the floor. The smell of fear mingled with the scent of burning refried beans. Lachlan, her older brother, watched from the corner with a sneering smile. He was the heir to his father's beliefs, the one who'd go and work with him in the workshop, the one who actually deserved everything. "Leave her be, Pa. If she wants to be a bookworm, she can piss off with them." Those words were the final judgment. Graham looked at his daughter on the floor, clinging to his dusty boots, and then at the book. "You're right, Lachlan. If this is more important than your family, then you don't have a family." The orange firelight illuminated his furious face. Chloe pleaded. "I'll do whatever you want. I'll scrub the floors, I'll cook, but don't burn it. I'm begging you." Her father looked at her with cold eyes, without a single shred of compassion. "It's too late for begging, girl. You've brought shame upon my house." The heat from the flames reached her where she lay. Wendy was silently weeping, but she didn't dare intervene. The fear of the man who provided the roof was stronger than the love for her daughter at that moment. Graham didn't burn the book. He did something worse. He flung it onto the dirt floor in front of Chloe. "Take it, and get out of my house. I don't ever want to see your face here again. If you prefer studying over your own blood, then go and study in hell." Chloe, trembling, picked up the damaged book. She knew this wasn't an empty threat. Chloe stood up, salvaging what little dignity she had left. Her scraped knees were stinging, but the pain in her chest was 1,000 times worse. She clutched the anatomy book against her heart. It was a used book, with scuffed corners, but to her, it was worth more than gold. She looked at her father, Graham, hoping to see some sign of doubt, a flicker of regret. She found nothing. She only saw the harshness of the desert reflected in his eyes. "What are you waiting for? Get out!" he roared, pointing toward the open doorway where the cold afternoon wind was blowing in. Wendy, her mother, darted into the small bedroom and pulled out a cardboard suitcase tied with a piece of string. It was the suitcase they used to store old christening clothes. With shaking hands, she started stuffing in 2 of Chloe's worn dresses, a pair of broken shoes, and a shawl that had belonged to her grandmother. "Wendy, what are you doing?" Graham yelled. "Don't give her anything. Let her leave the way she came into this world." But Wendy, for the first time in years, ignored him for a second. "She's my daughter, Graham. I can't let her go like this. She has to take something warm," she whispered, not daring to look at him. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a small roll of crumpled pesos, money she'd saved from running errands. "Take this, my girl," she said softly, pressing the money into Chloe's hand. "Go to your Auntie Sharon's place across the pass. She'll help you. Run, before your father." Graham saw the exchange and lunged at them. "Traitor, you're giving her my money to keep up her nonsense?" He grabbed Wendy's arm fiercely, making her let out a whimper of pain. Chloe felt a rage she'd never experienced before. "Don't touch her," she screamed. "Don't hurt her because of me. I'm leaving. See, I'm going." She let go of her mother's hand and grabbed the cardboard suitcase, the book she held under her arm, like a shield. She headed for the door. Every step was sheer torture. She looked one last time at the smoky kitchen, the place where she'd been born, the only world she'd ever known. Lachlan, her brother, didn't even look up. He was still eating a piece of bread. To him, she was already gone. "And don't come back," Graham said, his voice like a headstone. "As of today, I have no daughter. Chloe is dead to this family." Those words echoed in the silence. Crueler than any physical blow, Chloe crossed the threshold. The Juarez wind greeted her, swirling dust all around her. She adjusted her grandmother's shawl, smelling the familiar scent of mothballs and lost memories. She didn't cry. Not yet. If she cried, she'd collapse right there. And she knew if she fell, her father would leave her lying in the dust without mercy. She had to be strong. She was 17, with a damaged book and a cardboard suitcase, and she was utterly alone. She started walking down the dirt road, moving away from the only home she had ever known. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky a sad, desolate orange. In the distance, she could hear the faint sound of the Rio Bravo, the border. She knew the pass was on the other side, but it seemed as far away as the moon. She looked at the book in her hands. "For you," she whispered. "For you, it's worth it." And she quickened her pace before the darkness caught up with her in the middle of nowhere. The walk to the river was longer than she remembered. The sun was sinking fast behind the Franklin Mountains, staining the sky a violent purple. Chloe was walking along the dusty riverbank of Ciudad Juarez, a place that, in 1972, was a mix of hope and desperation. The lights of El Paso, Texas, glittered on the other side of the river like fake diamonds, promising a future that felt impossible to reach. All she had were the few pesos her mother gave her, and fear squeezing her throat. She arrived at the edge of the Rio Bravo. It wasn't wide at that time of year, but the current was deceptive. And the worst thing wasn't the water, it was La Migra, the men in green patrolling the other bank. She knew stories of people who tried and were turned back, or worse. She hid behind some dry shrubs, observing. The water ran dark, and the night brought a bone-chilling cold, even through her grandmother's shawl. She clutched the suitcase against her chest. An older man, his face leathery from the sun, was sitting nearby, smoking a cigarette. He looked at her without surprise. "Going to cross, little one?" he asked, his voice gravelly. Chloe nodded, unable to speak. The man chuckled under his breath, a joyless sound. "Bad night for crossing. There's a full moon. They'll spot you before you even touch the water." Chloe felt the panic rising. "I have to. I have nowhere to go. I was kicked out of my house." The man studied her. He saw the book she was protecting. "Because of that thing, they kicked you out because of a book." Chloe nodded again. The man sighed, tossing his cigarette on the ground and stamping it out with his boot. "The world's gone mad. My son died for knowing too much, and they kick you out for wanting to know. Come on then." He led her about 100 meters downstream, where the bank was lower, and there was an old, half-sunken rowboat. It belongs to Don Pancho, but he won't be using it tonight. I don't have any money to pay him, sir, Chloe said, her voice barely a whisper. I don't want your money, little one. I just want that if you make it to the other side, you use that thing you're carrying under your arm well. He pointed to the book. Make the risk worthwhile. Now, row fast and don't look back. And if they catch you, don't say you saw me. Chloe climbed into the boat, shivering. The wood was damp and cold. She placed the suitcase on the bottom and grabbed the oars. The water was freezing. Every stroke was a mammoth effort. The boat moved slowly, and the current pushed her south. She could see the car lights on the American side. She felt exposed, tiny beneath the immense sky. The fear was so intense she could barely breathe. She thought of her father. Was he eating dinner? Did he regret it? She knew the answer. Graham would be sleeping soundly, convinced he'd done the right thing. When she was halfway across, she heard a shout in English. Stop! Hold it right there! A powerful light swept across the river, blinding her. It was the Border Patrol. Chloe's heart stopped. She rowed frantically, but the light followed her. She was trapped. The boat hit something, a sandbank, and stopped dead. She saw two uniformed men on the bank, yelling things she barely understood. Her dream had ended before it even began. The beam of the spotlight paralyzed her. Get out with your hands up, one of the Border Patrol officers shouted. Chloe was shaking so hard she could barely move. The cold water was up to her ankles as the boat got stuck in the mud. She thought of her father, Graham, and the smile of her brother, Lachlan. Being sent back would be worse than being thrown out. It would be the ultimate proof of her failure. She couldn't go back. She wouldn't return to that house to be humiliated. She decided to risk everything. She grabbed her cardboard suitcase and her book and jumped out of the boat into the icy water, which rose up to her waist. The current struck her, almost knocking her over. Don't move, the officer shouted again. But Chloe kept going, fighting the mud and the water toward the American bank. She was just a few meters away. She heard a metallic sound, like a weapon being cocked, but she wasn't sure. She only knew she had to reach dry land. She fell to her knees on the muddy bank, soaked, shivering from the cold, but safe. The two officers ran towards her, their faces stern beneath their hats. Are you crazy, kid? Are you mad? You nearly drowned. Chloe could only gasp, clutching her suitcase and her book. They were the only things she had in the world. One of the officers, an older man with a grizzled mustache, looked at her with what seemed like pity. He saw the book. All this for that? He asked in broken Spanish. They kicked me out of my house, Chloe managed to say, the tears finally flowing, hot on her cold face. My father, he doesn't want me to study. The younger officer, blonde and tough-looking, grabbed her arm. It doesn't matter, it's illegal. You have to go back. Miss. But the older man placed a hand on his partner's shoulder. Wait up, Officer Reese. Look at her eyes. She's not lying. He knelt down to Chloe's level. Do you have family here? Someone in the pass? My aunt, Chloe lied. She remembered the name her mother had given her, my Auntie Sharon. She lives near Stanton Street. She had no idea where Stanton Street was, but she prayed it sounded convincing. Sergeant Macca sighed. He knew the rules, said he should process her and send her back, but it was 1,972, and things on the border, though tough, sometimes allowed for a minimum of humanity. He saw the fierce determination in the soaked girl. Hop in the truck, kid, the sergeant said, helping her to her feet. We're going to find your aunt. The young officer protested. Sergeant, we can't do that. But the sergeant cut him off with a look. Tonight we can. She's shaking. She's going to get sick. We'll take her downtown and see if we can find this Auntie Sharon. It's better than leaving her here for the coyotes. Chloe couldn't believe what she was hearing. It was a miracle. As she rode in the back of the Border Patrol truck, shivering under a rough blanket they gave her, she looked back. Ciudad Juarez looked dark, distant. It felt as if she had crossed not just a river, but an ocean. The officer driving looked at her in the rearview mirror. That aunt of yours better exist, kid, or you'll be swimming back. Chloe swallowed and nodded, holding onto her wet book. The lie about her aunt was her only hope. The patrol truck dropped her near downtown El Paso. The sergeant, in the end, didn't look for Auntie Sharon. He simply looked at her with tired eyes. "Don't get into trouble, kid, and be careful. This town isn't kind to people like you." He gave her a $5 bill. "Buy something hot." Chloe got out, paralyzed by the city lights. It was so different from Juarez. The buildings were tall, the cars sped past, and everything was written in English. She walked for hours, aimlessly. Her wet dress clung to her body, and the night cold was penetrating. People looked at her strangely, a soaked Mexican girl carrying a broken cardboard suitcase. She felt invisible, yet at the same time, too visible. She found a dark alley between two buildings and huddled behind some rubbish bins, trying to shield herself from the wind. She opened the suitcase. Her clothes were damp, but her grandmother's shawl was almost dry in the middle. She wrapped herself in it, took out the anatomy book, and opened it carefully. The pages were wavy from the river water, and some of the letters had bled. She cried silently, not because of the cold or the hunger, but because of the damage to her only treasure. She felt guilty. Was all this worth it? Was it worth being alone, pursued, and homeless, for a dream that now seemed impossible? Her father's voice echoed in her head. Women aren't good for this. She spent the night wide awake, listening to the sirens and the unfamiliar sounds of El Paso. At dawn, the hunger was a sharp ache in her stomach. She used one of the $5 to buy a hot coffee and a lamington in a small Mexican shop. The taste of the coffee brought back some life. She saw an advertisement in the shop window. Help wanted for cleaning. Providence Hospital. It was in Spanish. Her heart skipped a beat. She showed up at the hospital with her clothes still damp and her hair a mess. The supervisor, a stocky woman named Debbie, looked her up and down skeptically. "Do you have papers?" was the first thing she asked. Chloe lowered her gaze. "No, ma'am, but I need the job. I'm a fast learner and I work hard. Please." Debbie sighed. She needed staff for the night shift, the shift nobody wanted. The night shift is tough, from 11 to 7. Cleaning floors, bathrooms, the worst of it. "I'll do it," Chloe said without hesitation. "I'll do anything." Debbie observed her for a long moment. She saw the desperation, but she also saw something else. Fire. "All right. You start tonight. I'll pay you cash at the end of the week, but if you cause me one problem, just one, you're out. Got it?" Chloe felt relief wash over her. "Yes, ma'am. Thank you. You won't regret it." That night, while mopping the long corridors of Providence Hospital, Chloe felt strangely at home. The smell of antiseptic and sickness didn't bother her. She watched the nurses in their spotless white uniforms, moving with efficiency and kindness. She saw a doctor save the life of a man who arrived in an emergency, and she knew, with absolute certainty, that this was her place. It didn't matter that she was cleaning the floor. She was breathing the same air as them. The first few months in El Paso were brutally difficult. Chloe worked all night at the hospital, an exhausting job that left her hands raw from the cleaning chemicals. During the day, instead of sleeping, she looked for ways to learn. She had rented a tiny room in a crowded apartment building in the second ward, sharing a bathroom with 10 other people. The rent consumed most of her cash salary. She spent what little she had left on food and books. She went to secondhand bookstores and bought biology, chemistry, and English texts. She studied at the public library, where she could sit in silence and benefit from the heating. She felt guilty for not contacting her mother, but she didn't dare. She knew that if Graham found out she was in El Paso, he would be capable of crossing the border just to drag her back by force. At the hospital, she was a shadow. The doctors and nurses barely noticed the quiet young woman cleaning the floors. But Chloe watched them, memorizing medical terms she heard in passing, reading the signs on the walls. One night, she was cleaning the emergency room when a man injured in a construction accident was brought in. He was bleeding profusely from his leg. The doctor on duty, Dr. Ben Carter, a young and serious man, was overwhelmed. "I need pressure here, now!" he yelled at a novice nurse who seemed paralyzed by the sight of blood. Chloe, who had been cleaning nearby, saw that the nurse was not reacting. Without a second thought, she dropped the mop, grabbed a wad of clean gauze from the cart, and ran to the patient. She applied firm pressure to the wound, exactly as she had read in her damaged anatomy book. "Keep the pressure there, don't let up," she said, her voice steady. Dr. Carter looked at her, surprised. He was about to yell at her to get back, that she was just the cleaner. But he saw the technique, he saw the calmness in her eyes. "Well done, don't move." They worked together for several minutes until they managed to stabilize the patient. When it was all over, the novice nurse apologized, trembling. Dr. Carter dismissed her with a gesture and then turned to Chloe. She backed away, frightened. "Sorry, doctor. She thought they would fire her, but Dr. Carter stopped her. "Where did you learn to do that?" Chloe hesitated. Then she pulled her worn anatomy book out of her uniform pocket, where she always kept it. "I read this, sir. I want to be a nurse." The doctor took the book, the pages rippled by river water. He flipped through it and saw the meticulous notes Chloe had written in the margins. "You're on the night cleaning shift?" he said, more of an observation than a question. "Yes, sir." He stared at her. "Keep studying, Chloe. You have good hands and a good head. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Those were the first words of encouragement she had received since her mother gave her the money. That night, Chloe cleaned the floors with renewed energy. Someone had seen her potential. Dr. Ben Carter didn't forget the young cleaner. He was a man who had also struggled to get to where he was. His own parents had been migrant fruit pickers in California. He saw the same fire in Chloe that he had. A few nights later, he found her in the empty cafeteria during her 30-minute break, eating a dry sandwich while reading her chemistry book. He sat down opposite her, which made Chloe nearly choke with nerves. "How are you going with the English?" he asked in Spanish. "It's hard, doctor. I speak a little, but reading the medical books is very slow. I have to translate every word." Ben nodded understandingly. "You can't be a nurse if you don't master English. The orders, the medications, one mistake, and it's someone's life." Chloe felt a pang of despair. It was another wall, as high as the border itself. "I know, but I'll keep trying." Ben smiled slightly. "I like your stubbornness. Listen, there are English as a second language classes at the El Paso Community College, the EPCC. But they are during the day." Chloe shook her head. "I can't, doctor. During the day I have to sleep or wash my clothes, and I don't have money for tuition." Ben pulled out a pen and wrote an address on a napkin. "Go to this address tomorrow. It's a church. Ask for Sister Mary. She runs a free program for immigrants, English classes and preparation for the GED, the high school diploma. I'll tell her you're coming." Chloe looked at him with tears welling up in her eyes. "Why are you doing this for me?" Ben shrugged. "Because 20 years ago, I was a kid picking strawberries who didn't speak English, and a teacher did the same for me. Pay the favor forward later, when you're a nurse." Chloe began attending Sister Mary's classes. Her life became an exhausting whirlwind. She worked at the hospital from 11 at night until 7 in the morning. She slept for 3 hours. She'd wake up, go to Sister Mary's church from 11 to 2 to learn English and maths. Then she'd go back to her room. She studied her science books until she collapsed from exhaustion, only to wake up and go to the hospital again. She barely ate. She was pale and thin, but her eyes shone with a new intensity. Sister Mary, an older woman with endless patience, became her mentor. "You have a brilliant mind, Chloe, but your body won't sustain this pace. You have to take care of yourself." Chloe told her story: the expulsion, the book, the river. Sister Mary hugged her while she cried, releasing months of pent-up pain. A year passed like this. Chloe now spoke English fluently, albeit with a strong accent. She had passed her GED exam with one of the highest scores in the program. Dr. Carter had been watching her. One day he called her into his office. "Debbie, the cleaning supervisor, is retiring," he told her. "They want to offer you her position. You'd be the night shift boss. Better pay, less physical effort." It was a huge opportunity, a way out of poverty, but Chloe felt a knot in her stomach. Chloe looked at Dr. Carter, her heart pounding. Being the cleaning supervisor was a massive jump. It meant a stable salary, respect. It meant she could put the mop down forever. She could buy new clothes, maybe even send some money back to her mother if she could figure out how to do it secretly. But it wasn't her dream. It was a comfortable detour, a pretty cage. "It's a great opportunity, doctor. I appreciate you thinking of me," she said slowly. But he interrupted her, knowing the answer. Chloe took a deep breath. "But it's not what I want. I want to be a nurse. If I take that job, comfort will trap me. I'll never get out of the night shift." Ben Carter smiled, a genuine smile this time. "That's the answer I was hoping for, Chloe. Comfort is the enemy of progress. Turn down the job. I have something better for you." The hospital had a tuition assistance program for employees who wanted to study nursing. The problem, he explained, was that it was designed for nursing assistants, not for cleaning staff. And to be an assistant, she needed basic certification. "I've spoken to the director of nursing. She saw your GED file. She's impressed. If you pass the Certified Nursing Assistant exam, a CNA, she'll give you a day shift position. And with that, you can apply for the hospital scholarship for nursing school." Chloe felt the world opening up. A day shift position. Studying. But fear returned. "Doctor, the exam costs money and the books for studying." Ben raised his hand. "Sister Mary has already secured the books. And as for the exam fee," he opened a drawer and pulled out an envelope. "This is a loan. From me to you. You pay me back when you get your first nurse's salary. Now, go and study. You have 3 months." Chloe threw herself into studying as if her life depended on it, because, in a way, it did. She continued working the night shift, but every free minute was spent in the church library. Dr. Carter allowed her to follow him on his rounds during the quieter hours of the night, explaining procedures, asking her questions. The other cleaners looked at her with a mixture of envy and admiration. They called her the little doctor. The day of the exam arrived. Chloe was so nervous she could barely hold the pencil. She took the written test and then the practical in front of a strict examiner. She had to demonstrate how to move a patient, how to take vital signs, and how to change a dressing. She did everything with the precision she had observed over countless nights in the hospital. When she finished, the examiner looked at her expressionlessly. "You'll receive your results by mail in 2 weeks." Those 2 weeks were the longest of her life. Every day, she checked the rusty mailbox of her building, her heart leaping with every bill. Finally, an official envelope arrived from the state of Texas. She opened it with trembling hands. "Congratulations, Chloe Reyes. You have passed." She fell to her knees in the dirty hallway of her building, crying with relief. She had done it. She was officially a certified nursing assistant. With the certification in hand, Chloe resigned from her night cleaning job. The director of nursing, Mrs. McMillan, kept Dr. Carter's promise and gave her a CNA position on the day shift, on the maternity floor. The change was overwhelming. For the first time in almost 2 years, she slept at night and worked during the day. Her salary was better, and although the job was physically demanding, helping mothers and newborns, she felt like she was doing something that mattered. She immediately applied to the El Paso Nursing School, using the hospital scholarship, which covered half the tuition. The other half she paid with her salary, leaving her with almost nothing. She still lived in the same tiny room. Her co-workers, other assistants, spent their money on new clothes or going out dancing. "Chloe, why do you live like a nun?" One of them, Shaza, asked her. "You never have any fun." Chloe just smiled. "I'm saving for my future." Her CNA uniform was her pride. She hand-washed it every night until it was spotless. Juggling full-time work with nursing classes was hell. The classes were difficult. The technical English was a constant challenge. Many times she fell asleep over her books, waking up at 4 a.m. in a panic over an exam. There were times when she wanted to give up. The pressure was immense. One night, during a hospital shift, a patient in labor had a severe complication. The registered nurse in charge panicked. Chloe, remembering her nights in emergencies with Dr. Carter, remained calm. She assisted the doctor, anticipating his needs, keeping the room calm until the baby was born safe and sound. The impressed doctor told Mrs. McMillan, "That assistant is worth 2 nurses. She has the instinct." Chloe's reputation was growing. She wasn't just the smart Mexican girl. She was the best CNA on the floor. Dr. Carter watched her from afar, proud. He often found her in the hospital library, reviewing charts, and asked her complex questions, already treating her like a colleague. Meanwhile, in Ciudad Juarez, things weren't going well. Lachlan, her brother, had turned out to be a disappointment to Graham. He didn't like the hard work in the workshop. He preferred spending money in bars and gambling. The border economy was worsening, and Graham's workshop was barely making a profit. Wendy, her mother, had aged 10 years in 2. She missed Chloe with a dull ache, but the fear of Graham prevented her from looking for her. One day, Wendy received a letter. It had no return address, just an address for a church across the pass. Inside was a brief note and a money order for $20. "Mom, I'm okay. I'm studying. Don't tell anyone. I love you, C." Wendy hid the letter in her chest and cried silently. It was the first sign of life from her daughter. The money was more than she had seen in months, but the joy was mixed with the terror that Graham would find out. The next 2 years were a blur of exhausting work and relentless study. Chloe graduated from nursing school. She was at the top of her class. At the graduation ceremony, when her name was called, Chloe Reyes, with high honors, she searched the crowd. Sister Mary was there, applauding with tears in her eyes. Next to her, Dr. Ben Carter watched her with a smile of deep pride. They were her family now. Providence Hospital hired her immediately as a registered nurse, RN, in the intensive care unit, ICU, a coveted position that usually required years of experience. But Dr. Carter had advocated for her. "She's been in the ICU more than most," he joked, "even if it was with a mop." Her first nurse's salary was more money than she had ever held in her hands. The first thing she did was go to Dr. Carter's office. She handed him an envelope with the money he had loaned her for the CNA exam. "Thank you, doctor, not just for the money, but for believing in me." Ben took the envelope and put it back in Chloe's hand. "Consider it an investment, Nurse Reyes. Now, go and do what you do best. Save lives. And don't let that degree go to your head." Chloe moved into a small, but clean, apartment near the hospital. It was the first time in her life she had her own bathroom. She bought simple second-hand furniture and a large bookshelf. She filled it with books. Her damaged anatomy book, the one that crossed the river with her, occupied the place of honor in the center. She often touched it before going to work, as a reminder of how far she had come. She started sending money to her mother regularly, always through Sister Mary's church, with a simple note, *, I'm fine, still studying. Take care. * Wendy kept the money secret, using it to buy extra food or medicine that Graham, in his stubborn pride, refused to buy. The workshop went from bad to worse, and Graham's bitterness grew every day. Lachlan, her brother, was now in serious trouble, owing money to dangerous people in Juarez. Graham blamed the world, the government, the Yanks. He never blamed his own rigidity. Sometimes, on drunken nights, he would mention Chloe. "That ungrateful child," he would mutter. "She's probably scrubbing floors in El Paso, or worse. It's what she deserves for defying her father." Wendy would lower her gaze and tighten her lips, keeping the secret that kept her alive, the secret of the envelopes arriving from El Paso. One night, in the ICU, Chloe was monitoring a critical patient. It was a high-tension job, but she moved with a calmness that inspired confidence. Dr. Carter, now head of the emergency room, passed by. "Good evening, Nurse Reyes." "Good evening, doctor." They looked at each other with the respect of two professionals who had been through the fire together. Chloe had arrived. She was exactly where she had dreamed of being. But fate still had one more test for her, one that would force her to confront the past she had left on the other side of the river. 5 years passed. By 1979, Chloe Reyes was one of the most respected ICU nurses at Providence Hospital. She was no longer the frightened girl who crossed the river. She was a 24-year-old woman, with a quiet confidence and a reputation for being infallible under pressure. She had started taking night classes at university, preparing to apply to medical school. Dr. Carter had become her main mentor, and their friendship was deep, based on mutual respect. While Chloe ascended, her family in Ciudad Juarez was falling apart. Graham's workshop finally went bankrupt. Competition from large factories and Lachlan's mismanagement had ruined everything. Lachlan, now a bitter young man laden with debts, blamed Graham for not modernizing. Graham, in turn, blamed Lachlan for being lazy. The adobe house, once full of austere pride, now felt empty and smelled of failure. Wendy lived in a state of constant fear. The money Chloe sent secretly was the only thing keeping them afloat, something she hid from Graham in a panic. "Wendy, where did you get the money for that sack of beans?" He would growl, suspicious. "The sister at the church gave it to me, Graham, out of charity." Graham hated the word charity more than anything. It was a direct blow to his masculine pride, a pride that was already shattered. Lachlan's situation worsened drastically. He had gotten involved with dangerous moneylenders in Juarez, men who didn't accept excuses. One afternoon, 2 burly men showed up at the house. They didn't knock on the door, they kicked it in. "We're looking for Lachlan Reyes," said the leader, a man with a scar running across his eye. "He owes a lot of cash." Graham, although old and defeated, swelled with rage. "Get out of my house! My son isn't here!" The men laughed. "Stupid old man. If he doesn't pay by Friday, we'll come for him, and if we don't find him, we'll collect from you or your wife." They shoved Graham against the adobe wall, making him fall. Wendy screamed. The men spat on the floor and left, leaving a terrifying silence. Graham stayed on the ground, not because of the blow, but because of the absolute humiliation. He had failed at everything, as a provider, as a father, and as a man. Lachlan, who was hiding in the backyard shed, had heard everything. Panic took hold of him. He knew those men weren't joking. He couldn't ask his father for help, who had nothing left. There was only one place he could go, a place he had despised all his life, but which now represented his only salvation. He had to cross to El Paso. He had to find the sister he had helped expel. That night, Lachlan took the last few pesos Wendy had hidden under the mattress, the money Chloe had sent. Wendy saw him. "Lachlan, no. That's for food." "I need it more than you, Mom," he said, his eyes wild with fear. "I'm going to El Paso. I'm going to find Chloe. She has money. She'll save us." And without looking back, he ran towards the river, following the same path his sister had taken years ago, but for completely different reasons. Crossing the river was a humiliating experience for Lachlan. He didn't have Chloe's luck. There was no full moon. But there was also no charitable soul who offered him a boat. He had to pay a coyote with a portion of the stolen money and cross hidden in the back of a foul-smelling vegetable truck. He was dumped in a parking lot on the outskirts of El Paso at dawn, dirty, scared, and without a clear plan. He knew Chloe worked at a hospital, but El Paso was a big city. He spent 2 days wandering the second ward, spending the little money he had left on cheap food and alcohol, trying to muster the courage. He felt like a failure. He remembered Chloe as a skinny, dirty girl, clutching a stupid book. What could she possibly have done? Surely, as his father said, she was scrubbing floors or married to some poor worker. Finding help from her was a remote possibility, but it was the only one he had. Meanwhile, in Juarez, the debt collectors returned. Not finding Lachlan, they carried out their threat. They entered the house and trashed it. They broke the few remaining pieces of furniture looking for money. Graham tried to stop them and received a brutal beating. They left him lying on the dirt floor with a broken rib and a bloody face. Wendy, terrified, could only hide and pray. "Tell your son he's a dead man," they shouted as they left. When Wendy came out of her hiding place, she found Graham moaning in pain. The man who had terrorized her for decades now looked like a broken child. "Graham, for God's sake." He looked at her, and for the first time she didn't see rage in his eyes, but pure and absolute terror. "They've taken everything, Wendy, everything." She knew that wasn't true. They still had something, or someone. She made a decision she had postponed for years. She left Graham in the care of a neighbor and walked to the church in Juarez, which worked with Sister Mary. She used the coins she had left to make a call to El Paso. "Sister Mary," she said, weeping. "It's Wendy, Chloe's mother. I need to find her. It's an emergency. My husband, my son, please help me." Sister Mary, hearing the desperation, knew that Chloe's past had come knocking. In El Paso, Lachlan was in trouble. Fear and guilt were consuming him. He had entered a bar to ask about work, but his desperate appearance attracted the wrong kind of attention. He got into a fight with 2 men over something stupid. Being 1 against 2, and weakened by hunger and alcohol, he didn't stand a chance. They beat him savagely in the back alley and left him for dead, with a deep knife wound in his side. He spent hours there, bleeding into the rubbish. The pain was unbearable. Just when he thought he was going to die there, a bread delivery man found him and called an ambulance. Lachlan was barely conscious when the paramedics loaded him up. Through the fog of pain, he could only whisper 1 word before passing out. Hospital. They were taking him to the nearest public hospital, Providence Hospital. The sound of the emergency room doors bursting open was common on Chloe's ICU shift. But that night, something was different. Dr. Carter was leading the resuscitation of a patient who had just arrived. Stab wound trauma to the left lower quadrant. Blood pressure dropping. We need 2 large-bore IV lines. Now, Chloe, as the ICU charge nurse that night, was called to help prepare a bed for the patient in case he needed emergency surgery. She approached the trauma area to get the report. She saw the patient on the gurney. He was covered in blood and grime. His face was swollen and bruised from the beating, almost unrecognizable. But there was something in the structure of his jaw, in the shape of his dark, matted hair, that made Chloe's heart stop. She moved closer, as another nurse cut off his dirty shirt. "He has no ID," the nurse said. "Only this." In the nurse's hand was a small, blood-stained Street Jude Thaddeus medal. Chloe felt the air leave her lungs. It was the medal her mother, Wendy, had given Lachlan for his confirmation. She had bought it with her own savings. Chloe remembered it perfectly. She looked at the swollen face of the man on the gurney and, in that instant, the shattered features rearranged themselves in her mind. It was him. It was Lachlan. "Chloe, what's wrong?" "You're pale," Dr. Carter said, noticing her hesitation. She couldn't speak. The man who had mocked her, who had encouraged her father to kick her out, who had smiled while she pleaded, was dying in front of her, and she was the only intensive care nurse available to prepare a place for him. The heart monitor began to beep erratically. "He's going into hypovolemic shock," Ben shouted. Chloe felt a wave of contradictory emotions: rage, pain, fear, and, strangely, a pang of compassion. She saw the boy she had grown up with, not the monster he had become. She shook her head, snapping back to the present. "He needs an O-negative transfusion." "Already on it," her professional voice took control. "Prepare ICU bed 3. I'm taking him up as soon as we stabilize him." As she worked, her hands moved with their usual efficiency, setting up the IV line, hanging the blood bag. But her mind was chaos. Why was he here? What had happened? Did this mean her father was in El Paso too? The fear that Graham might appear at any moment paralyzed her for a second. "Nurse Reyes." "Concentrate," Ben snapped at her. She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. The patient was her brother, the man who hated her, and now his life depended on her. As they transferred him on the gurney towards the ICU elevator, Lachlan opened his eyes for a split second, delirious with pain. His hazy eyes met Chloe's. "Chloe?" he whispered, before losing consciousness again. That whisper confirmed her worst fears. The past wasn't dead, it was bleeding on her gurney. They took Lachlan to the intensive care unit. Dr. Carter and a surgeon took him straight to the operating room. The wound was deep and had grazed a kidney. Chloe stayed in the unit, preparing everything for his post-operative return. She had to call the director of nursing. "Mrs. McMillan," she said over the phone, trying to keep her voice steady. "The trauma patient who just came in is my brother." There was silence on the other end of the line. "Your brother?" "Chloe, I didn't know you had family in the pass." "I didn't either," Chloe replied honestly. "I haven't seen him in 7 years. Since I left home." Mrs. McMillan was understanding. "Chloe, you can't treat him. It's a conflict of interest. It goes against protocol. I'll assign another nurse to his case." "Take the night off." "No," Chloe said, surprising herself with her firmness. "I'm the charge nurse on duty, and I'm the best one here. There's no one more qualified to handle a post-surgical trauma case tonight. I will treat him like any other patient, with professionalism. Please, let me work. Mrs. Macmillan hesitated, but she knew Chloe. She knew her discipline was steel. All right, but if you feel you can't, you call me immediately, and Ben will be supervising. When Lachlan came out of surgery, he was stable, but in critical condition. They set him up in bed 3. Chloe began the routine, connecting the monitors, checking the drains, administering the IV medications. Each action was methodical, precise, but every time she touched his skin, a memory struck her. She remembered Lachlan pushing her to the floor. She remembered his sneering laugh. If she wants to be a bookworm, she can piss off. She spent hours beside his bed, monitoring his vital signs. She watched him sleep, a sleep induced by anesthesia. He was no longer the arrogant brother of her memories. He was just a broken man, pale beneath the fluorescent lights. She saw he had his father's hands, calloused, but now dirty and neglected. She saw the street-jewed medal, which the nurses had cleaned and placed on the bedside table. So many years of hating him, and now all she felt was an exhausting emptiness. Dr. Carter entered the ICU at 3 a.m. to check on Lachlan. He found Chloe standing by the bed, adjusting the morphine drip. "How is he?" he asked quietly. "Stable. Blood pressure is holding. The wound is draining cleanly," she replied without looking at him, her eyes fixed on the monitor. Ben stood beside her. "You're not okay, Chloe. You're shaking." She hadn't realized. Her hands, usually so steady, had a slight tremor. "Ben, that man, he ruined my life," she whispered, the professionalism finally breaking. "He told my father to kick me out." He laughed. "And now he's here, and I have to save his life." Ben placed a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to save him, Chloe. The team will save him. You just have to do your job. You are a nurse. That's what you are. You're not the 17-year-old girl he hurt. Understand?" She took a deep breath and nodded. The next morning, Lachlan began to wake up from the anesthesia. He was moaning in pain. Chloe was by his side, checking his vital signs. He slowly opened his eyes, confused by the beeps and the tubes. He looked around, disoriented. Then, his eyes focused on her. He saw the spotless white uniform, the name badge that read Chloe Reyes, R.N., and her face, now a woman's, serene and professional. The confusion in his eyes turned into sheer astonishment. "Chloe?" his dry throat croaked. Am I dead? Are you an angel?" Chloe felt a bitter laugh rise in her throat, but she suppressed it. "You're not dead, Lachlan. You're at Providence Hospital, in El Paso. You had surgery. You were stabbed." Lachlan tried to process the information. He looked at his hands, his arms connected to the lines. Then he looked at her again, this time with fear. He vaguely remembered calling her Chloe in the emergency room. You're a nurse," he said, as if it were the most impossible thing in the world. "Yes, Lachlan, I'm a nurse." The irony was so thick you could almost cut it with a knife. The boy who said books were useless for a woman was now being cared for by the woman who had sacrificed everything for those books. The silence in the room was heavy, only broken by the soft beep of the heart monitor. Lachlan didn't know what to say. Don't talk. You need to rest," Chloe said in a neutral voice. She moved to adjust his pillow. Her touch was efficient, but not cold. Lachlan flinched at her contact. Why? Why are you here?" "Because I live here, Lachlan. I work here. The question is, why are you here? And why were you stabbed?" Fear returned to Lachlan's eyes. "No, I can't. Dad," he agitated, trying to sit up, but the pain stopped him. "Calm down. You'll tear your sutures," Chloe ordered him. "I don't know what's going on in Juarez, but you're safe here for now." Just then, Dr. Carter entered. He saw that Lachlan was awake. "I see our patient has finally joined us. I'm Dr. Carter, and I see you've already met Nurse Reyes. You're lucky. She's the best we have." Lachlan looked at Chloe, then at the doctor, and shame completely flooded him. If this story has already touched your heart, if you're feeling the tension of this reunion, leave your like and stay until the end. Because what Chloe is about to discover is even more shocking. And the real test of her forgiveness is just beginning. Dr. Carter continued. Chloe, can I speak with you outside for a moment? They walked out into the hallway. He's awake. Now comes the hard part. A man stabbed, without papers, crossing illegally. The police will want to talk to him, and probably immigration too. Chloe felt a punch to the stomach. Despite everything, he was her brother. Ben, he's not a bad man. He just made bad choices. Ben looked at her sadly. It doesn't matter right now. What matters is that you have to make a decision. Is he your brother, or is he just another patient? Before Chloe could answer, she saw a small, hesitant figure at the end of the hallway, near the ICU reception. It was an older woman, wearing a worn rebozo. Sister Mary was by her side, pointing towards Chloe. It was her mother. Wendy had found her. Chloe felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. She hadn't seen her mother in 7 years. Wendy looked like she had aged 20. She was thinner. Her hair was full of gray, and the wrinkles of worry deeply lined her face. When Wendy saw Chloe, in her white uniform and her confident posture, she stopped, as if seeing a stranger. "My girl, is that you?" she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. Chloe ran towards her, forgetting Dr. Carter, forgetting Lachlan, forgetting hospital protocol. She hugged her tightly, burying her face in her mother's worn shawl, the same smell of home and spices she remembered. "Mom, you're here? How?" They cried together in the middle of the hospital hallway, a hug that erased 7 years of pain, fear, and distance. Sister Mary watched with a sad smile. "I had to come, my girl," Wendy sobbed. "Your father and Lachlan. Oh God, Chloe, everything is a mess. Is Dad here? Is he okay?" Chloe asked, the panic rising again. "No, he's in Juarez. He's hurt. Some men went looking for Lachlan. They smashed up the house. They beat your father." Wendy squeezed Chloe's hand. "Lachlan stole the money you sent me. He said he was coming to find you. You've seen him. He's here." Chloe's heart sank. She looked at Dr. Carter, who had been watching the scene respectfully. Then she looked towards the door of ICU room 3. "Mum, you have to be strong. Lachlan is here. He's in that room." Wendy put her hands to her mouth, stifling a cry. Is he alive?" "He's alive," Chloe said softly. "He was stabbed. We operated last night. He's stable." Wendy wanted to run towards the room, but Chloe stopped her. "Mum, wait, it's complicated. You have to prepare yourself." She took her to a private waiting room. She brought her a glass of water. She explained the situation. Lachlan was injured, but he was also in trouble with the law for crossing illegally, and the police would want to know about the fight. Wendy listened, her face shifting from relief to fear. "But you're looking after him," Wendy said, clinging to that fact. "You're a nurse. My girl. Look at you. You are everything you dreamed of." She touched Chloe's uniform as if it were an apparition. "Dad, he doesn't know. He keeps saying horrible things. He says you're scrubbing floors." Chloe felt an old wound open. "What he says doesn't matter anymore, Mum. What matters is what we'll do with Lachlan." "He's your brother, Chloe," Wendy pleaded. "I know what he did to you. I know he's weak, but he's your blood. And he's also the man who stole from me and almost got Dad killed because of his debts," Chloe retorted, her voice cold for a moment. She saw the pain in her mother's eyes, and her armor softened. "I'm going to look after him, Mom. It's my job, but I don't know if I can forgive him. Not after all this." Chloe took Wendy to see Lachlan. When Wendy entered the ICU room and saw her son connected to machines, she broke down. She threw herself onto him, crying his name, kissing his forehead. "Lachlan, my son, what have they done to you?" Lachlan, who had been pretending to sleep, opened his eyes when he heard his mother's voice. Seeing her there, next to Chloe, was the ultimate humiliation. "Mom, what are you doing here?" he whispered, ashamed. "I came looking for you. I came looking for my daughter," Wendy said, looking at Chloe. "And I found you, both of you." The tension in the room was palpable. Chloe stayed at the back, professional, checking the monitors. "Lachlan," her voice hardening. Why? Why did you steal from your sister? Why did you leave us like that? Your father. Don't talk about Dad, Lachlan snapped. This is all his fault. His stupid pride. He never let me do anything right. And steal from people is doing something right? Leaving us to be beaten? Wendy shouted, her pain turning into rage. You don't know what it's like, Mum. Those men were going to kill me. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice, Lachlan, Chloe said softly, stepping closer. You could have worked. You could have been honest. But you chose the easy way. The same way you chose when you let Dad kick me out of the house. Lachlan looked at her, his eyes full of venom. Oh, right, the goody two-shoes. The perfect nurse. Do you think you're better than me now with your white uniform? I'm better than I was. I built something. What have you done besides destroy? You destroyed Dad's workshop, you destroyed Mum's peace, and you almost destroyed yourself. Wendy watched the fight, her heart divided. Stop it, both of you. You're siblings. We're in a hospital. Lachlan laughed, a dry laugh that turned into a painful cough. She's not my sister. My sister was a fool with a book. I don't know who you are. Nurse Reyes. The words struck Chloe. Despite all her success, her brother's contempt still had the power to hurt her. She turned away, regaining her professional composure. As your nurse, I inform you that you need to rest. Your vital signs are agitated. I'll give him a mild sedative, she said coolly. I don't want anything from you, he snarled. Well, it's not a choice. It's a medical order. She left the room, leaving Wendy alone with Lachlan. She needed air. She went out to the hospital rooftop, the same place she used to go when she was a cleaner and dreamed of the stars. The El Paso sun was rising, but she felt a deep cold. Dr. Carter found her there. How was it? Horrible, she admitted. He hates me. Even now he hates me. He doesn't hate you, Chloe, Ben said, standing next to her. He hates what you represent. You represent every bad decision he made. You are the mirror of his failure. People like that don't say thank you. They attack. Chloe looked at him. My mother wants me to help him. She wants me to save him from immigration, to pay off his debts. And what are you going to do? I don't know, Ben. I don't know. Back in Ciudad Juarez, Graham was alone. The neighbor had cleaned his wounds and left him food, but he hadn't touched it. He sat on the broken chair in the kitchen, in the shattered house. The silence was deafening. For the first time in his life, Graham was completely alone. Wendy was gone. Lachlan was gone. The house, his kingdom, was a pile of rubble. His pride had been shattered, just like the furniture. He grabbed a bottle of cheap tequila that the debt collectors had ignored. He drank straight from the bottle, feeling the burn in his throat, but the alcohol didn't numb the pain of his broken rib or the ache of his humiliation. He looked at the wood stove, cold and extinguished. He vividly remembered that afternoon, 7 years ago. He remembered Chloe's face pleading, I'll do whatever you want, but don't burn it. Take it and get out of my house, he remembered saying. As of today, I have no daughter. He poured himself another drink, his hands shaking. Had that been the moment everything started to go wrong? He had clung to his son, Lachlan, the heir, the man, and Lachlan had turned out to be straw, without strength, without honor. He had expelled the one who had steel in her spine, the one with guts, the one who was right. He stood up with a groan. The rib pain was sharp. He walked to the small room that had been Chloe's. It was almost empty, just the bed frame and the smell of dust. He reached under where the mattress used to be, searching. He didn't know what. His fingers touched something. A small notebook. It was Chloe's diary. She had forgotten it there. He had never known, she wrote. He sat on the cold floor and, with difficulty, in the gray morning light, began to read. He read about her dreams of becoming a nurse. He read about how she saved pennies to buy her books. He read about the fear she had of him, her father. He read about how much she admired the work of the nurses she had seen once in a clinic. They weren't complaints, they were hopes. Page after page of dreams that he had tried to crush. Graham closed the notebook. The alcohol was not to blame for the tears running down his weathered cheeks. It was the belated realization of his own monstrous stupidity. He had been wrong. He had broken his family for a macho, empty pride. He had hit his wife. He had expelled his daughter and raised a coward. He stayed there, on the floor of Chloe's room, an old, broken man, realizing that he had destroyed the only thing that mattered. Meanwhile, in the past, Wendy was sitting next to Lachlan's bed. He had calmed down after the sedative. She held his hand, the same hand that had robbed her. "Lachlan," she whispered, "you have to ask her for forgiveness. She saved your life. Don't you understand? The girl we despised is an incredible woman, and she is your only hope." Lachlan turned his head, his eyes closed, but he was listening. Shame was a bitter taste in his mouth. Chloe returned to the ICU after her break. She found her mother asleep in the chair next to Lachlan's bed. She looked exhausted. Chloe put a blanket over her shoulders. Then she turned to her brother. He was awake, watching her. There was no longer rage in his eyes, only a deep, tired resignation. "Thank you," he whispered, so low that Chloe barely heard him. She stopped, surprised. "What did you say?" "Thank you for saving me. You had every right to let me die in that alley." Chloe felt something in her chest loosen. "I'm not you, Lachlan. I'm not Dad. I'm a nurse. I did my job." "No," he said. "You did more than that. You treated me with kindness after what I did to you." Tears began to flow from his eyes, tears of shame. "I was always envious of you," he confessed. "Dad was always yelling at you, but I knew you were smarter than me. I knew you were strong, and I was weak. And I hated you for that. I hated that you showed Dad that I wasn't enough." Chloe sat on the edge of the bed, protocol forgotten for a moment. It was the first honest conversation they had ever had. "I saw you, Lachlan. I saw you smile when he kicked me out." "I know," he sobbed. "I was happy you were gone, because when you were here, his disappointment with me was bigger. I was a coward, and I kept being one. I stole from Mom. I let Dad get beaten. I'm rubbish." "You're not rubbish, Lachlan," Chloe said, her voice soft. "You're a man who made terrible decisions, but you're alive. You can change it." Just then, two men entered the room. One was an El Paso police officer, the other an immigration agent, ICE. "Excuse us," the police officer said. "Are you Lachlan Reyes?" Chloe's heart stopped. Wendy woke up startled. "We understand you are a Mexican citizen, entered without inspection, and were involved in an altercation. We will have to take you into custody as soon as the hospital discharges you." Wendy clung to Chloe's arm. "No, please don't take him. Those men in Juarez will kill him." The ICE agent looked at her without compassion. "Those aren't our rules, ma'am. He's here illegally." Chloe stepped forward. "Officer," she said, addressing the police officer. "My brother was the victim here. He was assaulted, and he has information about the men who did it. Men who, I'm sure, cause problems on both sides of the border." The officer looked at her. "And who are you?" "I'm Chloe Reyes. I'm the charge nurse of this unit, and he is my brother." The officer exchanged a glance with the ICE agent. Chloe's intervention had changed things. He was no longer just an anonymous illegal immigrant. He was the brother of a respected hospital professional. "Well," the police officer said, "maybe we can talk about a witness visa, if he cooperates." Lachlan's cooperation was total. He described the men who attacked him, connecting them to the money-lending network in Juarez. The El Paso police were interested. It turned out that those men also operated an extortion ring in the past. Lachlan became a valuable witness. The ICE agent, pressured by the police department and by a quiet call Dr. Carter made to a hospital lawyer, agreed to suspend the deportation while Lachlan cooperated. Chloe and Wendy sat with the hospital lawyer. "He has a chance," the lawyer explained. "If he testifies, we can apply for asylum as a victim of a violent crime and due to the danger he faces in Mexico. It's not guaranteed, but it's a chance." Wendy looked at Chloe. "But the money for this? We have nothing." Chloe squeezed her mother's hand. "I'll take care of it, Mum. I have savings." Using her savings meant delaying her plans for medical school. It meant sacrificing her own future again for the brother who had despised her. She hesitated for a moment. She saw her mother's hopeful face. She saw her brother's terrified face, and she made a decision. I'll pay whatever it costs. He's my family. Lachlan recovered slowly. Chloe was no longer his primary nurse, but she visited him every day. They talked, for real. He told her about Graham's fall, about how his father's pride had blinded him to reality, leaving him vulnerable to Lachlan's deception. Chloe told him about Dr. Carter, about Sister Mary, about sleeping in alleys and cleaning floors. For the first time, they saw each other as two survivors of the same shipwreck. When I get out of here, Lachlan said from his hospital bed, I want to work. I'll do anything. I'll clean floors. Anything to pay you back, Chloe. And to help Mum. Chloe nodded, seeing a glimpse of the man he could be. First, you have to testify, and you have to stay clean. Meanwhile, in Juarez, Graham had made a decision. After reading Chloe's diary, he sold the few remaining tools in the shattered workshop. He bought a bus ticket. He didn't know exactly where he was going, but he knew he had to cross. He had to find Wendy. He had to find the daughter he had cast aside. He took Chloe's diary, wrapped it in a rag, and put it in a small bag. He arrived in El Paso days later, an old, broken man with no money. He walked the streets, asking for a church that helped immigrants. Finally, someone directed him to Sister Mary's church. He walked in, hat in hand, feeling smaller than he had ever felt. I'm looking for my wife, Wendy Reyes, he told the sister. And I'm looking for my daughter, Chloe. Sister Mary recognized him from Wendy's descriptions. She looked at him with stern eyes. You are Graham. Sister Mary looked at Graham with a coldness he had never seen in a woman of faith. You are Graham? She repeated. I have heard your name many times in this church. I have heard it in Wendy's tears. I have heard it in the nightmares Chloe had when she was learning English here. Graham shrank. Guilt was a physical weight that hunched his shoulders. I know what I did, sister. I was a monster, a fool. There was no pride in his voice, only the empty shell of a man. Wendy is here, in the pass. She is safe, the sister said without softening her tone. But Chloe is not the girl you kicked out. She is a woman who has built a life on the ashes you threw her into. Graham nodded, accepting every word as a deserved blow. I don't come to ask for anything, sister. Just to return something. I found it, and I read it. Sister Mary took the diary. She saw the worn pages, the youthful handwriting. You read it? Every word, Graham said, his voice breaking. I read how she dreamed. I read how she feared me. I realized, too late, that I expelled the only good thing in my house. I didn't understand. I didn't know. Sister Mary's severe facade cracked a little. She saw genuine remorse, not an excuse. Wendy is at Providence Hospital. Your son Lachlan is there. He is injured, the sister explained. Graham's face filled with panic. Lachlan. He too. He's alive. He's alive because Chloe saved his life, the sister said, letting the weight of that sentence fall upon him. The daughter you despised for her books. She used those very books to save the son you preferred. Graham covered his face with his hands and let out a dry, painful sob. Can I see them? He pleaded. I have to see Wendy. I have to. Sister Mary thought about it. Chloe was strong, but seeing her father so suddenly might be too much. She picked up the phone in her office. I'm going to call the hospital. I'll talk to Wendy first. She will decide if you can see them. Wait here. Graham sat on a wooden bench in the church, trembling, feeling like a sinner awaiting judgment. The call reached the ICU reception. Chloe was on a round. Wendy took the phone. Sister, what's wrong? Wendy, it's me. You have to be strong. Someone has come to the church. Someone from Juarez. It's Graham. He's here. He wants to see you. Wendy almost dropped the phone. She looked down the hallway towards the room where Lachlan was sleeping, and then towards the office where Chloe was reviewing charts. Her whole world was about to explode. Is he okay? Was the first thing Wendy asked. He's broken, Wendy. But he's here. And he brought something. Something that belongs to Chloe, the sister said. Wendy took a deep breath, making a decision. I'm coming over there. Don't say anything to Chloe. Not yet. I'll handle this. She hung up the phone. She looked at her daughter in the distance. So strong, so professional. She knew this encounter could either destroy her or free her forever. Wendy took a taxi to the church. Every kilometer felt like 100. She didn't know what to feel. Rage for the man who had mistreated her and beaten her daughter. Pity for the man who had been shattered by his own pride. Fear of what his presence would mean. She pushed open the church doors and saw him. Graham was kneeling on the first bench, his back bowed. He wasn't praying. He seemed simply unable to stand up straight. He turned slowly. He stood up. If Wendy had aged 20 years, Graham had aged 50. He was emaciated, his face full of bruises healing poorly from the beating. His eyes, once full of fire and rage, were now dull, flooded with infinite sadness. They stood looking at each other across the church aisle, 7 years of pain and silence between them. He took a step. Wendy? She instinctively stepped back. That movement, that small step back, hit Graham harder than any punch. "No, I won't hurt you, Wendy," he whispered. "Never again. I swear on what little I have left." Wendy saw his trembling hands. The hands that had hit her now only shook. The rage she expected to feel dissolved, leaving only a deep exhaustion. "What are you doing here, Graham? Did you come for Lachlan, to finish ruining us?" "No," he said. "I came for you. The house is empty. Lachlan is gone. You're gone. Everything broke." He pulled out Chloe's diary. "I read this. I read it all. I understood." "What did you understand?" "You kicked her out," Wendy shouted, the pain finally pouring out. "You kicked her out into the cold for a book. You let Lachlan mock her. You almost killed me with grief." "I know," he shouted back, and the shout broke into a sob. "I was blind, a proud animal. I thought being a man meant shouting the loudest, and I didn't see that the only one with true courage in that house was her. It was Chloe, and I cast her aside. I failed you, Wendy. I failed her. I failed God." He fell to his knees in front of her, the proud Graham, crying at his wife's feet for the first time in his life. "Forgive me, Wendy, not for coming back. Just forgive me for everything." Wendy looked at him, and the woman who had lived in fear for 30 years disappeared. She saw a pathetic man who needed help. She approached and helped him up with difficulty. "I'm not the one who has to forgive you, Graham. It's her. And I don't know if she can. Where is she? Is she okay?" the sister said. "She's more than okay, Graham," Wendy said, with a fierce touch of pride in her voice. "She's alive, and she's strong, and she's at the hospital. Lachlan is there. Chloe saved his life." The news struck Graham again. "We have to go. You have to see what you did. You have to see who the girl you kicked out became," and she led him out of the church, towards the hospital. Chloe was finishing her 12-hour shift in the ICU. She was exhausted. The stress of handling Lachlan's case, paying the lawyers with her medical school savings, and dealing with her mother's presence had depleted her reserves. She just wanted to go to her apartment, shower, and sleep. She said goodbye to the incoming shift nurse and walked towards the elevators. The doors opened into the main lobby. The Providence Hospital lobby was full of people. Visitors, doctors, patients, in wheelchairs. Chloe walked distractedly, her mind on a report she had to write. Then she looked up. She saw her mother, Wendy, standing near the main entrance, and next to her, motionless as a pillar of salt, was Graham, her father, the man who had haunted her nightmares for 7 years. She stopped dead in her tracks. The noise of the lobby disappeared. Her heart began to pound so loudly she could hear it in her ears. He saw her. Their eyes met across the lobby. Graham took an instinctive step towards her, but Wendy placed a hand on his chest, stopping him. Chloe felt the air leave her lungs. It was a mix of pure terror, the reaction of the 17-year-old girl who wanted to run and hide, and a cold, adult rage. She stood paralyzed, unable to move. What was he doing here? Had he come to drag her back? Had he come to hurt her mother? To take Lachlan? She saw the bruises on his face, his dirty clothes, his defeated posture. This wasn't the monster of her memories. This wasn't the tyrant of the adobe house. He was an old, dirty, and broken man. Wendy slowly approached Chloe, as if approaching an injured animal. "My girl, please, Listen to me. He came. He came to the church. He's sorry. Chloe couldn't take her eyes off her father. Get him out of here, she said, her voice barely a whisper, but vibrating with a dangerous intensity. Mum, I swear, get him out of my hospital. Now. Chloe, please. He just wants to talk. I have nothing to talk about with him. Chloe started walking, not towards them, but towards the side exit. She wanted to run away. Graham saw her leaving, and panic seized him. If she left, he would lose her forever. Chloe, wait, he cried out, his broken voice echoing in the lobby. People turned to look. Chloe froze, turning her back to them. Please, daughter, just 1 minute. She turned around slowly. Her face was pale, but her eyes were burning. Don't call me daughter, she said, her voice clear and cutting. You lost that right 7 years ago? In a kitchen in Juarez. What do you want, sir? Did you come to spit on me? Did you come to tell me that women are useless for this? She pointed to her uniform. Is this not enough for you? Or did you come to hit me like you hit Mum? Graham recoiled, as if she had slapped him. The hospital lobby had fallen silent. People watched the scene, a family drama unfolding in front of them. Graham looked around, humiliated, but he didn't leave. I deserve that, he said quietly, advancing slowly towards her, his hands open, empty. I deserve that and more. I deserve you to spit on me. I deserve you to hate me. He stopped a few meters from her, not daring to get any closer. I didn't come to ask you for anything, Chloe. I didn't come to take you. I didn't come to yell. His eyes filled with tears. I came because I was wrong. Wendy watched, crying silently. Chloe remained rigid, her body trembling with adrenaline and repressed rage. You were wrong, she repeated bitterly. It took you 7 years and losing everything to realize it? It took Mum being beaten and your son nearly being killed? No, he said. It took this. He reached into his worn bag and pulled out the small notebook. Chloe's diary. He held it out to her. I found it, under your mattress. I read it. Chloe's heart stopped. That diary contained all her secrets, all her fears, all her childhood dreams. She felt exposed, violated. You read my thoughts. I read your soul, he corrected, his voice broken. I read how you wanted to be a nurse. I read how you hid to study. I read that you didn't hate me. You were just afraid of me. And I, like a blind animal, punished you for being better than me. I punished you for having the courage that Lachlan and I lacked. Tears streamed down Graham's weathered face. I didn't burn your book that day, Chloe. But I burned your heart. I burned my family. Chloe looked at the diary in his hand. She remembered writing it by candlelight, hidden, dreaming of a place like this. And now the man who had tried to destroy those dreams was giving it back to her in the lobby of her success. It was too much. The rage that had sustained her began to crumble, replaced by an overwhelming wave of pain. The pain of 7 years of loneliness. And what do you expect me to do with this? She said, her voice trembling for the first time. Do you expect me to hug you? To tell you it's okay, Dad? It wasn't okay. You left me alone. I crossed that river thinking I was going to die. I slept in alleys. I cleaned strangers' blood from the floor, dreaming of the day I could save them. And you were at home, raising a thief. I know, Graham said, not defending himself. I don't expect you to forgive me. That would be too much to ask. I just wanted you to know that I know. That you were right. That your dream was valid, and that the only fool, the only useless one, was me. He placed the diary on an empty bench between them. And I came to tell you that your brother, Lachlan, you saved his life, Wendy told me. You saved the one who stomped on you. You are a better woman than I ever was a man. He turned around, ready to leave. Seeing him turn away, defeated, ready to disappear, triggered something in Chloe. Wait, she said. Graham stopped but didn't turn around. Don't leave like that. He looked over his shoulder. Why? Why did you come? Just for the diary? I came for Wendy, he admitted. I came because I had nowhere else to go. I'm alone. I lost everything. The workshop, the house, everything. And I realized that the only thing that mattered was this: you lot. She saw Dr. Carter, who had come out of the ICU after hearing the commotion, and was watching from a distance, ready to intervene if necessary. Chloe was at the center of her universe, her painful past and her triumphant present colliding in a hospital lobby. "You hit us," she told Graham. "You hit Mum. You pushed me." "I know," Graham said. "And I'll live with that shame every remaining day of my life. There's no tequila that will erase that, Chloe." "No," she said, "there isn't. And I can't erase everything. I can't pretend it didn't happen. You broke me, Dad." "I know." But Chloe took a deep breath, feeling the weight of 7 years lift a little. "But you're here, and you're hurt. And you are my father." She walked towards him. Graham tensed, expecting a blow, a scream. Instead, Chloe took his trembling, dirty hand. She looked at it, the hand of a worker, now ruined. "You're hurt. You have bruises. Your rib hurts." Graham looked at her, confused. "Yes, a lot." Chloe returned to her nurse mode. It was the only way she knew how to handle the pain. "Mum, take him to the emergency room. Tell Dr. Carter to send him through. He needs a chest x-ray. And he needs food." Graham looked at her in disbelief. "What? You can't walk around like that. You're sick. And you have nowhere to go," Chloe said. She turned to Wendy. "Mum, take him. I have to go. I have to think." She picked up her diary from the bench. She clutched it against her chest, alongside her patient reports. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Dad. Not today, maybe never. But I won't let you die on the street." Chloe walked away, moving fast, without looking back. She passed Dr. Carter. "Ben, my father is in emergency. Broken ribs, malnutrition. Can you make sure he's looked after?" Ben nodded, his face full of compassion. "Of course, Chloe. Go home. Rest." She nodded, and walked out into the bright El Paso sun, feeling more tired than ever. But for the first time, feeling like the war inside her had ended, Chloe slept for 12 hours straight. When she woke up, her apartment was silent. She sat in her small kitchen, holding her old anatomy book, the one that crossed the river, and the diary her father returned. She placed them side by side. They were the beginning and the near end of her journey, the dream and the pain side by side. For the first time, she cried. Not from rage or sadness, but from relief. The monster of her dreams had turned into a frightened old man. She showered, put on clean clothes, and went to the hospital. She wasn't on duty, but she had to go. She found her mother in the cafeteria, eating a bowl of hot soup. Wendy looked up and gave her a tired smile. "Your father is stable. He had 2 fractured ribs and is dehydrated. They're keeping him under observation tonight." "Where is Lachlan?" Chloe asked. "They moved him this morning to the safe house. The lawyer said his testimony is very strong." "Good," Chloe said. She sat down opposite her mother. "Mum, what are we going to do? They can't live with me in my apartment, and I don't have—" "Shh, my girl," Wendy interrupted her. "Don't worry about that now. Sister Mary will let us stay in the church shelter for a while. Graham, he wants to work. He said he'll sweep the church floors. He said he'll do anything." Chloe nodded. "Mom, I used the money. The money I saved for medical school. I used it for Lachlan's lawyer." Wendy took her hand firmly. "I know, my girl. I know what you sacrificed. Lachlan knows it, and he regrets it, I swear. I didn't do it for him, Mum. I did it for you, and, I guess, for me. I couldn't let our family completely destroy itself. Not anymore." Dr. Carter found them in the cafeteria. "Chloe, Wendy, glad to see you." He sat down. "Good news. Lachlan's testimony, combined with that of other victims, was enough. The police arrested the moneylenders this morning, on both sides of the border. The case is solid. Lachlan will get his witness visa, and eventually, asylum. He's safe." Wendy broke down in tears, this time from pure relief. "Thank you, doctor. Thank you for everything," Wendy said. "Don't thank me. Thank your daughter." She's the one who moved mountains. Ben looked at Chloe. And about medical school, I know what you did with your savings. The hospital has a new scholarship fund for outstanding employees seeking advanced education. The board meets next week, and I myself will submit your application. Chloe looked at him, stunned. Ben. Don't say anything, Nurse Reyes. Just keep doing what you do. A few days later, Graham was discharged. Chloe went to pick him up. It was the quietest car ride of her life. She took him to the small room in the church shelter that he would share with Wendy. It was humble, but clean and safe. When they stopped, Graham didn't get out of the car. Chloe, he said without looking at her, Dr. Carter told me you became a nurse here, that you started cleaning floors. Like I told you would. Yes, Chloe said softly. I started cleaning floors. There's no shame in that, Dad. The only shame is staying there if you can do more. He finally looked at her. You're a great woman, Chloe. You are everything I wasn't. You're strong, you're kind, and you're smart. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. I'm sorry I hurt you so much. It was the most honest apology he had ever given her. I'm sorry about a lot of things too, Dad, she said. I'm sorry I hated you for so long. She opened the door. Go in with Mum. She needs you. Graham got out of the car. Thank you, daughter. Take care, Dad. As she drove away, she saw him in the rearview mirror. An older man walking slowly towards a shelter. The tyrant had died. Months later, life found a new normal. Lachlan, after testifying, was released. True to his word, he started working in the kitchen of Sister Mary's shelter. It was hard work, washing pots and serving meals to other broken men. But he did it with a humility no one had ever seen in him. He saved every penny. Every week he gave Chloe a few dollars. It's for the lawyer, he would say. I'll pay you back everything, Chloe, even if it takes my life. Graham also found work. The hospital, through Sister Mary's intervention, gave him a maintenance job. He repaired wheelchairs and gurneys. It was a quiet, behind-the-scenes job. Sometimes, from a distance, he would see Chloe on the floor, moving with authority and grace among doctors and patients. He never approached her. He didn't want to interfere. But he watched her with a silent, painful pride. Watching her work was his penance and his redemption. Wendy flourished, free from the fear of Graham. She started volunteering at the church's nursery. She looked after the children of other immigrants. She moved into a small apartment with Graham, paid for by both of them. It was the first time their relationship was based on mutual respect, not fear. The Reyes family, broken in Juarez, was slowly healing in the pass. 2 years passed. Chloe's application for the medical school scholarship was approved, but she rejected it. Dr. Carter was shocked. Chloe, what? You fought so hard for this. I know, Ben, she said, sitting in his office. But these last few years have taught me something. My dream was to be a nurse, and I am, but now my dream is bigger. I don't just want to treat one patient at a time. I want to change the system, she continued, her eyes shining. I want to run this hospital. I saw how we almost lost Lachlan because of bureaucracy, because of the lack of resources for those without papers. I saw my father treated like a number. I want to fix that. Ben looked at her, realizing that the student had become the teacher. What are you going to do? I'm going to apply to the master's program in health administration. I want to be the one writing the protocols. Ben smiled. That's a harder path than medical school, you know? More politics. I crossed the Rio Bravo in a sinking boat, and I faced my father, Chloe said with a quiet smile. I think I can handle a board of directors. He laughed. Yes, Nurse Reyes, I think you can. While Chloe studied for her master's at night, financed by the hospital, her family continued to rebuild. Lachlan had become the supervisor of the shelter kitchen. He had met a woman, a social worker, and they were saving to get married. He still paid Chloe every week, and she still accepted the money, knowing it was important for his redemption. Graham and Wendy lived quietly. Graham had saved enough to buy a small set of tools. On his days off, he sat outside their apartment and repaired old toys, donating them to Wendy's nursery. He had become the neighborhood grandfather. He rarely spoke of Juarez. The past was a distant land. One day, Graham was in the hospital cafeteria on his break. Chloe, now assistant director of nursing, sat down opposite him with her own tray. It was the first time they had eaten together, voluntarily. They talked about simple things: the weather, Graham's work fixing a sterilizer, the children at Wendy's nursery. There were no grand speeches of forgiveness. They weren't necessary. Forgiveness wasn't a word. It was sitting down to eat together in peace. 8 years later, we are in 1990. Providence Hospital is inaugurating a new wing, the Reyes Community Health Center. It is a state-of-the-art clinic dedicated to providing affordable, bilingual care to the families of El Paso and immigrant communities, regardless of their legal status. On the podium, in front of politicians and journalists, is the hospital's executive director. It's Chloe Reyes. Almost 20 years ago, Chloe said, her firm voice resonating through the new clinic. I came to this hospital as a frightened girl who didn't speak English. I was looking for a job scrubbing floors, but I found a home. I found mentors, like Dr. Ben Carter, our chief of surgery. Ben looked at her from the front row, applauding with pride. And I found my purpose. This center is not just brick and cement. It is a promise. It is the promise that no one will be turned away for not having papers. It is the promise that no child will be afraid to ask for help. It is the promise that language will not be a barrier to saving a life, she continued. Many of you know that I come from Juarez, that my family, like so many others, broke and rebuilt here, in this city of two souls. This center is for them. In the crowd, Wendy cried with pride, holding Graham's hand. Graham looked at his daughter on the podium, his eyes clear. Beside him was Lachlan, his wife, and their small 5-year-old son, named Ben. Lachlan was now the finance administrator for Sister Mary's shelter. He had paid his debt to Chloe a long time ago, but they remained closer than ever. Chloe cut the ribbon. People applauded. Later, at the reception, a young journalist approached her. Chloe smiled, a serene smile. She looked for her family in the crowd. She saw her father playing with his grandson. She saw her brother talking animatedly with Dr. Carter. My family made mistakes, like all families, she told the journalist. The real miracle isn't that I'm here. The real miracle is that they are here with me. Success means nothing if you have no one to share it with. My future didn't shut anyone up. It simply gave us all a second chance to listen to each other. That night, Chloe stayed late in her new office at the clinic. It was large, with a window that looked out onto the lights of El Paso, and, in the distance, the glow of Ciudad Juarez. On the wall, behind her desk, there were 2 framed items. On the left, her master's degree in health administration. On the right, in a simple wooden frame that her father had handmade, was her old anatomy book, open to a page stained by the water of the Rio Bravo. She heard a soft knock. It was Graham. He was holding a newly painted toy chair. I know it's late, my girl, but I wanted to leave this for the children's waiting room. Chloe smiled. It's perfect, Dad. Thank you. He stood in the doorway, looking at the framed book. I never get tired of seeing that, he said. It reminds me how foolish I was. It reminds me how far we've come, she corrected. Well, good night, Director, he said with a shy pride. Good night, Dad. He left, and Chloe remained alone, looking at the lights of the 2 cities. She had been expelled for wanting a book, and now she directed the institution that represented hope for thousands. She had lost an adobe house, but she had gained a hospital. Her father, who once told her that women belonged in the kitchen, now worked for her. Her brother, who had mocked her, now admired her. Chloe's life hadn't been a revenge. It had been a revelation. It showed that knowledge was not something to be ashamed of, but the most powerful tool for healing, not just of bodies, but of families. The book wasn't the enemy. It was the salvation, and her future hadn't shut anyone up. It had simply taught everyone a new word: hope. The story of Chloe teaches us that no matter how dark the river or how rough the welcome on the other side, determination and knowledge are the light that no one can extinguish. If this story has moved you, please subscribe to Momentos Escritos and leave your like so we can continue bringing you stories of overcoming that inspire us all. And before you go, comment the word knowledge. if you believe that education and dreams are the strongest tools to change a destiny. And tell us, what lesson do you take away from Chloe's incredible journey? See you in the next story.